I'm here alone, so now I can say anything I want. Sam's a nice guy, and, I treasure our friendship, and we're all just growing together, and we're all just trying our best. I'm pretty tired. It's been a long day. It's been a long week, been a long month, been a long year, been a long life. But, together we get through it, all together collectively. Like, I don't have it today. And
how's it going? Hello.
There we go.
Actually, that reminds me, the entire last episode we recorded, I was like, why am I having to edit the compression and EQ entirely different? It's because it was my MacBook recording. It was the microphone from the MacBook, not this. So I just selected the wrong thing, and then I guess just now it reselected the wrong thing. But wow. I'm surprised and impressed that it took me 10, 15 minutes of editing before I realized, oh my God, that's not actually my high quality microphone. It's the MacBook.
What a treat. Anyway, as I was saying, we're all just trying our best, So, Sam, tell me about your Instagram, whatever. Distract me, please. I need some dumb bullshit from the internet.
So there's as there has always been and will always be, various gurus in the space of photography, specifically wedding photography. There's this guy who, I'm assuming he's a guy, I don't know. If you watch his videos, removing the edit, right? The slices and the crop ins and the crop outs and everything, he must be recording them literally like this the entire time. His physicality is super intense. And
you gotta have it.
But it's amazing. It's holy shit. Yeah. He figured out that if he moves like this and then edits the videos to make it a little more engaging and sane, it's actually engaging. And he gets a lot of interaction with his really bad business advice. I don't know.
It's one of the tricks.
I guess.
For the algorithm. No, it's literally
a thing. First time I've seen it. Am I late to this whole game?
Yeah, man. Do it. Add a movement. It's why why one of the reasons the TikToker folks move their camera in and move it out while they're talking. So, it's not what I'm doing with the microphone stuff of just it's a movement. It's emotion. It's manufactured emotion and excitement that then is translated to viewership because our brains, our lizard brains are.
See, that just makes me not trust anything they want to say. This is honestly something I've always struggled with figuring out how to promote something that I created, like an article or an opinion piece or anything. It's okay, how do I promote this in a way that gets people's attention? Every layer of that process
a little.
Makes me feel like I am losing trust with the audience that I actually want to gain trust from. It's such a messed up system.
Yes. Hello. Welcome to my literal pain. I don't know if you listened to our episode from 2 weeks ago. Listen to
Yeah, I edit and listen.
Listen.
Although, I'm not going to lie. I only listen for the ums and ahs when I edit.
Yeah, you zone out when you edit. There's no way you're listening to this.
No.
This guy, this fella saying stuff over and over.
Put in a little bookmark for future Sam. You are probably not listening to this as you edit this very phrase.
Oh, because we didn't say or ah. But, that.
Yeah, it's to the point where I can literally see in waveform what your ums and ahs look like.
I love that. I love that you know so much intimate detail. Such as my ums and ahs.
It's a special place.
Here's the thing. Running, how can I say this? What's the correct way to say this? I think I'm going to state it plainly and deal with whatever consequences come my way. The consequences being a couple of people commenting on a glass post being like, thank you, I love you, Daniel, or whatever. No one should run platforms. Platforms shouldn't exist on the internet. It doesn't work, and we're going to keep trying for the rest of time. And those of us that do choose to do it anyway, we are unhealthy. We do not
can
have
I say
normal brains.
Okay, so the very first thing my mind went to when you said that was Netflix, which I think in a lot of ways can be viewed as a platform. It's
100%. It has a point of view.
Really. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah.
It has a point of view. You're right. Okay, if that's what you describe. But they never, ever built in any type of feedback loop, which I think is your main pain point, being comments as part of their business. Like nobody goes to Netflix to watch something and then check the comments for feedback, right?
They go to IMDb for that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. What's the word? Oh my God, my brain is fogged this morning.
This is great news for both of us.
Offshored, outsourced. Thank you.
Sorry.
Outsourced the comments to IMDb or some other
Letterboxd. R.I.P.
Yeah,
Not R.I.P. But like R.I.P. Anyway, I'm just.
So this is the thing where it's like I feel like some platforms on the internet lean into comments because it's an easy engagement metric to juice and use as a thing. I don't know. Glass is, I think, a really special place because of the comments, because I actually get a lot of constructive criticism and pushback and just, I don't know, insights that I never would really get on Instagram or something, because it's like a separate place. Like all the photographers that post there know that their clients aren't also there, which is a distinctly different and special environment compared to
that's the magic.
Instagram. Yeah,
people are mad. I get an email every day that someone's like, I would love to find more clients on Glass. Why can't I find clients on Glass? It's like, well, that's because that's not what it's for.
It's not the point. Yeah,
like sure, we'll release tools that help you find and make money more in the future as we continue to mature, of course. But the community itself is not for inner selling. We're not, I don't know. It's been one of those weeks. I have a question, Sam.
Sure.
I was going to be in a much better mood when I had this question, and I thought it was going to carry us through a whole episode. Now we might get a couple of sentences out of it. Let's roll in.
Well, I'm gonna edit in to this point, and I'm gonna send you a picture of popcorn right now before you ask your question. And This is why I'm so distracted this morning.
Because popcorn's shitting all over the house.
I did step in his shit before we started recording, but also he's so cute.
God, we are 100%. Should we just start over?
No, it's fine.
Okay, my question. I'm waiting for this photo of your dog to come through.
It's coming through.
There it is. Oh,
I did get the new iPhone. Nobody cares. And
dude, great phone. Feels great in the hand. So much lighter.
It's great. Oh, yeah.
Much lighter.
It's got the, I hate to say this because it sounds weird 10 years later. It's got the lickable, like I want to lick it. Like
lickability.
The Steve Jobs measure of success. It's like, do you want to lick it though?
One of my friends runs there on Glass, Matt Bishkoff. They're a wonderful human being. They run. I want to say he's Matt B on Glass. I don't know. Anyway, he runs an app development studio called Lickability, and I was always super jealous of that name. Like,
it's a good one.
You get to put a tongue in your logo. That's just a win. Yeah. Okay, my question, since we can delete the first 10 minutes of this, my question is there a type of photography that you haven't done or don't do a lot of that you think that you could do great at if you just transitioned into it?
That's a really good question.
I can set the stage on what brought this question to mind. It involves my favorite band. So one of my favorite bands is an Australian band named Parcels. They're based out of Berlin. They've been there for the last 8 years. They're really wonderful. They're just a really wonderful dad rock pop hooray, really thoughtful musicians, and their chemistry is electric. Like just the group, the five people who make up the group all clearly have just been playing together for a decade and just really enjoy it and love it, and they're really good. And a big point of inflection for them, that, you know, they've toured, they've released EPs, whatever. In 2020, they released an hour-long set of them performing new recordings of their last album, their first studio album that they had released in 2019. So in 2020, they were going to go on tour. LOL, couldn't do that. So they went into their favorite studio in Berlin, and they recorded an hour-long set that they just put up on YouTube called Live Volume 1. And it's just an hour straight. Like, it's not, you know, it's like multiple camera views, but all one performance, all happening at the same time, right? Like, they're going in and out of the songs. It's all blended. It's not edited in any way. It's just them playing music together for an hour. And I found it got recommended to me on YouTube. Bless you, YouTube. For all the pain you have caused me recently, I still love you from time to time. And it gifted me this band like a month after that video came out. It had like 100,000 views at that point. It now has like 10 million. It went pretty viral. It was a big deal for them. They got a lot of followers and fans from that. And then it just kept growing. And they released their a double album in 2021, toured with it. And for the last year, they have, since they've been performing again, starting to work in dance music. They've been in Berlin for 8 years. They love going to clubs. They love dancing. They love just like funk, Berlin jazz, hurrah. Yeah, exactly. And so they, you know, finally admitted, oh, we love dance music too. And so they started working in dance editions of their songs, where, you know, like when a band gets a song remixed by a bad DJ, and then it's just like, oh, this sounds like that song that I love that's now bad. This is not that. This is, what if the musicians that I love that made the song that I love made their own dance music with that song?
Okay.
And so they've started working it in, figuring out how to do like jam band dance music.
Interesting.
And are now in the process of releasing Live Volume 2, where they rented a nightclub in Paris and just strapped GoPros to their chest and set up a couple of locked off tripods and filmed themselves doing a tiny, intimate dance concert in the basement of a club in Paris. And that's their next album. It is wow. It's like this huge departure from their normal, you know, their traditional sounding music, the music that they normally put out. But it, because of how they've done it, how they've released it, how they've worked it into the live sets, put up a couple of YouTube videos over the last year of like, oh, this new rendition, that sort of thing. And because it's them putting the same care that they put into their traditional style of music, it comes across wonderfully. It is so good.
Can you, just for people listening, reiterate or restate the name of this?
Yes, Parcels. I'll put all the links for these videos and stuff in the show notes. But okay. Parcels, Parcels, Parcels.
Nice.
They are wonderful. And so like it comes out in like 2 weeks. They've released 2 singles from it. I have become mildly obsessed with this in the same way that I was mildly obsessed with the first version, even though it's completely different. I'm in love. I made Tom listen to it this week. He was like, oh man, this is the dad rock of my dreams. Nice. Just having a great time. But it's got me thinking, it's such a weird transition to go from, you know, like, I don't know. It would be like John Mayer releasing a dance album, right?
Yeah, that's quite the shift. Interesting.
And so like, but because of how they've done it and how they've communicated with their fans, and also just being true to who they are and being really talented musicians, it's working, right? You know, like, as opposed to like when Justin Timberlake tried to make a country album being a Montana man and he was laughed into the woods, back into the woods. That's a good joke because of the name of the song. Okay. Yeah. You know, so like I'm like creatively it's such a different type of music, but it's the same thing, right? And so I was thinking, like, what would my photography version of this be, right?
Okay.
So if I'm like taking a bunch of street photos, I'm a street photographer, I'm a portrait photographer, I blend these things. What would I like, oh, I want to do this. I'm going to go do that now, but it's going to work because of my past influences and because of how I work. And I'm like, I know what my answer is, but now you get the question.
Ooh, if I could release a dance album version of my
Photography.
work,
Yeah.
That's what I've been trying to do with photographing my friend Chloe. It's like, let's change it up, and no one cares.
Well, I don't think that's correct.
Okay. Why? That is what it feels like to me.
them.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's nice. But that's what it feels like to me. It's normally I have a engaged, couple that's in love, that, photographing couples on a wedding day. I know people write endless appreciation, endless posts about the struggles of being a wedding photographer or whatever, on Reddit and Facebook groups and all this blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, most couples like to be close and cuddly with each other that have just been married. You do get the occasional like people that are camera shy and don't, no PDA because, whatever reason they're bringing. But the truth is, it's really easy to photograph couples. It just is. Now, to photograph couples in a creative manner, like there are layers and it can get very, very difficult. Don't get me wrong. Time constraints, lighting constraints, venue issues, like that's a real thing. But if you just have a couple standing in front of you, there is something you can say that is easy and natural to get them to be close and cuddly. If you try even like 2%. Having a singular person in front of you with the most epic background ever and say, do something cool. It's like, it doesn't work. It's so, I don't know, for me at least, it's very, very difficult. And that is my dance pop album of photography. It is a solo person in front of you trying to make them look engaging and natural and interactive, because it is just between me and the person in front of my lens. It's not me and those people doing their thing. It's it's really difficult. And this is also coming from somebody who just photographed like 28 headshots, I think, like 4 days ago, right? So I have this person walk in to my little lighting studio in the back corner of a room, and I have to guide them to where to stand. And we already talked about that in a previous episode of how silly it is to be like, just stand here and look this way. And it's like, nobody understands that. You have to literally paint lines on the floor for people to get what you're saying, which is very odd to me.
Did you do my T?
I
gotta do the T.
No, there was already a circle on the floor, so I stood in the circle myself and said, "Stand here, face this way." And I think because there was a circle there, they could get it. But to get somebody to resonate and become themselves in front of you is a real trick that I don't know, I find quite difficult, and I'm very comfortable. That I think is my get out of jail free card, is that I have been behind the camera long enough at this point that they don't sense my anxiety, because there is none, even though I have no idea how to get them to engage and unfold. Like in my head, it's like, oh my God, this is going horribly. But they perceive it as being, oh, this is going wonderfully. And I think that's the trick at the end of the day to getting a good photo or headshot or somebody looking really natural and liking how they look in the camera. But for me, that is my dance pop album. It's like with weddings, I can tell people, just look at each other, like put your focus on each other, energy toward each other. And I don't have that background, subroutine running where it's like, oh my God, this is going awful. This is so terrible.
Yeah.
Because clearly they are engaged with one another. Like, engaged is maybe a poor term, but they're
the correct
they're connecting.
Term. They're engaged.
They're connecting.
Now married.
Now married. They're connecting in a way that like I can objectively see and feel, oh, this is going great, because they are clearly in love. But with a solo person, that again, I am not built for that kind of photography. I really am not. Even when I take a one half of the couple on a wedding day, I still position the other person that's not being photographed over my shoulder for the person being photographed to look at so that they can connect. And I don't have to have any involvement in, coaxing out some sort of expression from that solo.
So do you have what? I'm
Sorry.
No, I love this.
Popcorn.
No, I'm thinking of the best way to say this. Okay. Well, like when you're shooting a couple, right, who's just had one of the most emotional moments of their lives, theoretically, 9 times out of 10, right? Mm-hmm. You're like documenting the thing and their emotions that's happening. You're documenting their intimacy and their connection and their relationship. But when you're photographing a single person and trying to make a thing, you have to provide that intimacy yourself, right? Like
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
which is not easy.
The reason I laughed is I almost said, "Do you have intimacy problems, Sam?" Right, like a therapist. But it's like, it's hard to be vulnerable when you're behind the camera and share that with someone to get them to be vulnerable in front of the camera. It's a weird. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So that is my answer to your question.
I love that.
That's my dance.
That's great. Wait, why do you say no one cares about it? Hit me. I mean, that's because you're posting things on, Instagram. That's what you get for trying to do something different.
I have. So a mutual friend of ours, I think at this point, Ryan Muirhead, has said many times, which is kind of funny from his perspective, that leaning too hard into like the reception on social media of what you are creating as validation for the thing is a really quick path to working in a circle where you are, only if you're really sensitive to, oh God, I know this is going to get 1,000+ likes or 100+ likes, whatever. If you think of that and actually let it impact you during your actual shoots or after, at any point really in the entire process of making a thing to put out into the world, that is a very quick recipe toward doing that same thing again. And so that has resonated with me in a way that when I put something out there that doesn't do super well, I take it as a sign that maybe I'm doing something really wrong, but also maybe I'm doing something really right. I take it as a moment to like actually reflect. And when something does really well, it feels really good, but I don't like think deeply about it in any way. I guess that's the point.
I don't even know what room this is.
For listeners that may not know, there is a hound dog that lives across the street from me. Her name is Pampa. She's very sweet. Pampa. And she's amazing. The family is from Buenos Aires, which is a place I've never been and really want to go. But she's quite loud when she's outside, and Popcorn is always like, "Oh, I gotta go see Pampa." So, yeah, he gets like really fixated and jumpy and boofy.
We've all been there, I feel the same way about Pampa. I need to meet Pampa.
Yeah, I'm sad you haven't yet. She's great.
You ever think about you ever think about your inspirations and like how you don't have a lot of control over them early on in your career?
Interesting.
Because like right now I have like like my inspiration cycle is pretty dialed, right? Like I know, which is not to say I can't be surprised or find someone's new work surprising or integrate new people, but like I know who my readers are. That's a writing term of like knowing who your readers are, who you're going to send your drafts to get feedback from, that sort of thing. Like I know who I'm shooting for, right? And if I trust their eye or I shoot super shallow depth of field, right? Like I shoot wide open all the time, and on the Midicon 1.4, that's like a 1.1 on a 35, right?
Yeah.
And before I was shooting with your 58 1.2, which is like 0.95, and then like wide open all the time. There are people that don't like shallow depth of field, and they've been like, True. "Oh, this shallow depth of field isn't working for me." It's like, okay, that's great. It's working for me. right? Like I know that I like this, and I know that this is the effect I'm trying to get. Therefore, like this shot is not for you, and that's fine, right? Like I did not shoot this for you to enjoy it. I shot it because I enjoy it. And that little, that little bit of knowledge is helpful, right? And that little bit of knowledge of like, oh, I know what I'm looking for in photographers, right? Like isolated street photographers who are documenting minuscule, small details of a space or of a city, right? Then the only way that you can is by going out over and over and over, knowing a place and like deeply knowing a place. And that's why, great, okay, that means I love these 10 photographers, and that's like my bracket. And so like, sure, there's amazing work out there of wedding photographers, right? Like I love your work. Your work is not, I am not in conversation with your work most of the time, right? When I'm shooting a wedding, I'm like definitely thinking of your work in like Brandon Wetzel and a few other, wedding photographers that I really love, Ollie Sampson, right? Like there are all these different people that I'm like, oh, I love their work. And so when I'm shooting a wedding, I'm thinking about that. But when I'm shooting streets, I'm not like, this is where Sam would bring up a prism to make the couple, because like I'm not shooting a couple, right? I'm shooting a doorknob or like a fucking trash can or something, right? And so it's like the inspiration that I'm able to take from people and from other people's work is a lot more dialed now as, an adult with a fully formed brain, and also like opinions that have been hard fought and won over decades of practice. When I started, I didn't have that, right? Like it was, oh, I love these photos. I love these photos. Great, right? Like there were like 3 photographers that were really nice on Flickr. So I loved their photos, right? Like, oh, this is amazing stuff. I went back and looked at their photos recently, and I was like, oh, this is actually not for me, right?
Yeah. Where were you going with that?
Well, so like part of, I bring all of that up because my answer for my dance album is I don't know if I actually have control over this, right? So my, the growing up, like my grandfather and my father were photographers. They taught me photography when I was very young, and it was like a thing that I did, whatever, through high school. In high school, I started taking concert photography in exchange for tickets. I wasn't doing it because I loved concert photography. I was doing it because I wanted to go to the shows. Mm-hmm. And so I would, shot the indie concert house photos in exchange for free tickets. And, it was really fun. It was really great. I loved it, but it was not the type of work that I like to do, or now I know that, right? Just then I was just like, oh, I'm just shooting an event. I'm here for whatever. And then when I got to college, 2 things happened, and it kind of like shifted my perspective on photography in a really big way. And then it, became the profession that I ended up going into, and now I'm, I guess, circling, right? Photography adjacent. Was I met a photographer, like a local photographer that went to the college, that just graduated the college that I was going to. And, someone started a YouTube channel. So like this is literally it. That that input, I had no blockers for these inputs, right? It just came. The photographer that I met, his name was Ben Blood. He is exceptional,
familiar name.
He's an exceptional wedding photographer out of the Pacific Northwest. He went to Walla Walla University, which is where I existed. And then he graduated, left, and but he left like this plethora of work behind, right? He was the photo editor 2 years before he graduated. And the year before he graduated, he was the head photo editor and the yearbook, because my tiny religious college had a yearbook for some reason. And so that's where all the creative kids went, was that we went to work on the yearbook so we could have full control. We had like a budget of like $40,000. We were able to hire designers. Yeah, it was insane. Thinking back on it, they look like offset printed 2,000 copies of a, 300-page book. Like that was when I was the editor of the yearbook before I left. Like literally that was my goal at college, was like, I'm going to become the yearbook editor. And then I got it my second year, and then I dropped out.
Wow.
No big deal. But so Ben Blood was the one before that. And so he was like deeply inspired by this old design blog called ISO50.com, which was the design persona for the musician Tycho, which is...
Oh, I love Tycho.
Yeah, Tycho.
That is my go-to Siri. Like, hey Siri, play Tycho.
Yeah.
Like morning time routine band.
Yeah. So Tycho, his name is Scott Hansen. He was a designer.
Shit. I just triggered a bunch of Siris. Hey Siri, stop.
Oh God.
Sorry everyone listening that has a Siri device.
This is because Sam has Siris in every nook and cranny of his home.
I have two HomePods sitting in front of me. Hey Siri, stop. This isn't Tycho. Okay, we're good.
Okay. So like he was this really incredible designer, and he had a really great design blog called ISO50.com. It's still there. And like a really wonderful little thing and source of inspiration for typography, color palettes. And like he is one of the people that caused that like washed out, faded highlights, like sepia tone, vintage vibe to seep into everything in like the mid-aughts. Like that's partly because all the designers were reading ISO 50. And he released soundtracks on ISO 50, just like mixtapes, here's the thing. And then he started releasing his own little musics in there. And then Tycho became the, multi-platinum selling massive artist. And now he's just a musician that like is living the dream. So Ben Blood was heavily influenced by ISO 50 and Scott Hansen, Tycho, whatever. And, not to say that I wasn't also, because I was reading that blog before I met Ben. But he, designed what I felt like was a perfect vibe of a yearbook, right? It was just like a really, looking back on it now, it's not good, right? Like none of our work was good when we were 19, unless you're a magician or Chrissy White. Chrissy White is an exceptional photographer who's been like making the best self-portraits this turn of the century since she was like 13, and now she's like a stoner in the woods knitting or something like that. I'm iconic.
That's amazing. Okay.
So anyway,
we're all of our lives should lead to just that end goals right there.
I know.
Stoner in the woods knitting.
Yeah. Okay. So, he it was like really sparse, over edited, like color tones were, this is the cold time. So now everything's very blue, right? That sort of thing. But like the minimalistic style and the bravery that it took to put a small photo in a full spread that was of empty, right? Like that level, there were all these little things. So I really loved Ben Blood's work. And then Chase Jarvis, a commercial photographer out of Seattle.
His name I do know. Yes.
Yeah. So he's like a photography all-star, Hall of Famer type fella.
Founder of Creative Live.
Yeah. So,
little things.
Well, that was a little thing back when it started, right? So he was a commercial photographer. He was one of the first commercial photographers that took being a commercial photographer and applied making content about it. He released right after it came out, he released, when the iPhone 3G came out, he released one of the first camera apps called Best Camera or Camera Plus. I think it was what it ended up eventually getting called. But it was, Best Camera. And then he released a companion book with it called The Best Camera is the one that you have with you. And it was like a little 6x6 square with a beautiful blue photo of a red flag on like the fucking North Pole or something, or South Pole. One of the poles, there are only two. And like he, was just talking about how, the best camera is the one you have with you. People won't people act different when you're holding a tiny phone in front of their face, that sort of thing. And he had all these like little tips sprinkled in, and like one of them specifically is seared into my brain, and I've given it, stolen it and given it here on this podcast like 4 times, and just in my entire life. Like the secret to photography is taking a hell of a lot of photos. That's from that book, right? So like he I
think I bought it, but I never actually read it.
So when there was this typical Sam, so there was this version of when the latest version of the SanDisk Extreme, the first edition SanDisk Extreme photos came out, that you could write like 8 photos a second to. It was a huge deal in 2011 or whatever this was. He negotiated the contract with SanDisk to shoot their, he was the photographer they hired to shoot the commercial images of for the SD cards, but he negotiated let me make a content with this. And he filmed the behind the scenes little, 2-part video of him in New Zealand shooting skiers and how he got the shot, and, all those, like all the little vlog stuff that was just starting to take off. And it, like really, really stuck with me. I followed him everywhere because he was also one of the only photographers that was releasing behind the scenes content, because he knew like, I'm already here, right? Like I'm set. I'm shooting for SanDisk. I'm shooting for Apple, right? Like, do you know the people who shoot there are professional photographers who get hired to shoot the fake, at the time, iPhoto photos, or the iLife photos that were in the fake thing of the demo, right? Like that's the level of shooting he was doing, and he was fine, right? Like had a team of 5 or 6 or 8, whatever, had a great office in Seattle. So he knew that like him sharing little tips wasn't actually going to impact his business at all. So it was amazing. Sure. So onboarded anything he put out all the time. And he had a beautiful exposed concrete wall in his office, and they had that same year that he released that, they had a holiday party, and they set up a photo booth, with really great, just like, oh, here's our $20,000 Manfrotto lighted photo booth for our company office party on just a white backdrop. And then everybody got drunk, and it was just taking a photo every 10 seconds or whatever. Everybody got drunk, ripped down the thing, beautiful thing in front of this exposed cement. And it was his profile picture on Twitter for a really long time, from like 2011 to like 2012 or 13, something like that. It was just him holding like a gin and tonic in a white, V-neck in front of this exposed brick thing with a perfectly lit flash. And for whatever reason, that was like the pinnacle of photography to me. Was that like that photo and that like whole experience. I was like, I need a studio. I need to do this. Right. And like, that's the thing I was working towards. At that same time, Ben Blood had just graduated college, left, and I was like rummaging around in all his ghosts, right? Like looking at his design files, working, like seeing how he had edited things in Apple Aperture, because we were still editing in Aperture and Photoshop instead of Lightroom, because Lightroom like had just come out, sort of thing, right? And was just like, digging in. And Ben was religiously posting on his blog, because we just had blogs back then, and it was amazing. And a local band in Walla Walla, Washington, called Garage Voice, went on tour, and Ben went with them. And was just like, it was unlike any photography I'd ever seen, right? Like it was a street style documentary photography for music for this band, right? So like, yes, there were the wonderful normal 16 millimeter 2.8, here's the band with a light behind them, holy hell, look at the energy here. But then it was like, here we are standing in line checking out at the grocery store at 3 a.m. because our van broke down and we're stuck, and like here are their feet perfectly lined up waiting with M&Ms behind it or whatever, and like the candy aisle while they're waiting for the register, and like all these little minutia of things, or like here's the drummer sleeping in the bus or whatever. And there was all this just beautiful detail and detritus that you didn't really expect for like music photography. And I was like, holy shit. And they played a Christmas album. They had a Christmas album. They did Christmas shows, and they had an ugly Christmas sweater. The bassist, his name was Chris, I think, was like doing, they laughed anyway. And like, he had this shot of the guy talking and laughing to someone, looking to his left, because it was facing right when you look at it, looking to his left, laughing, and it was cut off at like right below his nose. Mm-hmm. And that photo specifically, those two photos together were like it to me, right? Like, for whatever reason, I latched onto those photos. Those are my photos. Those are what photos are. And so, like, as soon as I got it, you know, I worked for years to get to the point where I would then have a studio that would have a brick wall. Unfortunately, I did it with brick, where I could recreate a combination of those two photos, right? Like, I worked for literal years to get to a spot where I could make a photo of myself holding a drink, looking to the left, and like laughing and talking to a friend. And like, it wasn't, I didn't realize that it was happening, right? Like, this wasn't a conscious thing I was doing, but I realized once I took that photo, like, holy shit, I feel amazing, right? Like, this is like, and then, you know, I very clearly could draw the lines backwards once I reached the end. But like, that whole time, I had no idea that was the thing I was working towards for years. Now I'm probably going to have to recreate the shot for this week's self-portrait. But there was like this.
Yeah, how have I not seen this?
I don't, well, because I haven't made it recently. I would have to like look through my old like Facebook archives, because I made this in like 11 years ago or whatever. Anyway, so my dance album would be following a band.
That was the longest story, and I loved every moment of it just to get to your end point.
Well, like, amazing. I would do, so all of that is why I would do it though, right? Like, I know that now, but like at the time I was like, I need to follow a band. I need to be a band photographer.
I feel like you just perfectly articulated why I feel like it's okay to have older people in political office, because no, just kidding. Because you just described every song I've ever written, where it's I'm so sorry. I know. I don't want to get on a tangent. But it is an odd thing to me that most of the time, not always, but the vast majority of the time, the thing that is being put out into the world by the creator themselves, where everybody that takes it in and looks at it or hears it or reads it, they're like, holy shit, this, I get it. This is what I want to do. You nailed it. And that creator has no fucking idea what they're doing in the moment. No clue. And when they're detached from the work enough, be it time or forgetfulness or whatever, they can look at it and be like, oh my God, I see exactly what I was going for in that moment. But never, almost never, do they actually consciously put that together. It was a weird trick, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. In college, where I was taking computer science classes, and a woman I was dating was a art history major. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this this painter who I'm in class with. His work is so thoughtful, and like he can describe what he's doing and then do it." And it's like, no, he isn't. No, he's lying to you. I mean, for the most part. Now, again, this isn't like I'm blanketing everything with this idea, because I think it is usually the case, not always, but very rarely do you have people that exist where they create something in the world that they know in the moment as it's being created exactly what they're going for. If it resonates, right? I mean, I think that's actually a big part of why a lot of work in the world is not well received, because people do overthink and try and have this picture in their mind of what they want to make, and then they make it, and then nobody cares. It's like, oh yeah, you're missing a step there. That step is just feeling it out and going with it. Like, other humans can detect when that has been the case or not. Usually. It can be faked quite well too. Like there have been really renowned works of art that and music and everything else that, have been faked into existence and pop culture for sure. But for the most part, it's like, no, you people can detect when it's real or fake. I just believe that. Until AI, I don't know. We don't need to wade into this as a focal point of our conversation, but I have been struggling a lot recently. Like, oh, this is fake. Like, I'm going to comment, this is fake. Like, this isn't real. And 9 times out of 10, I'm correct in that. And maybe 1 in 10, I'm not. And that's a weird place to be. Like I was reflecting this morning, like the fact that I even have to like think through this as a person that is looking at a photograph is quite upsetting to me. Like, is this real or is this fake? This is not cool. This is bad. Because think about the story you just told that like defined years of your life and made a beautiful story for 15 minutes of this podcast. What if Chase Jarvis messaged you and said, oh yeah, that was actually photoshopped together. The wall didn't even exist. Like, we were actually standing in front of a sheetrock that was white, like not brick. You're just like, hold on.
Heartbreaker.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's
Chase Jarvis. I'm going to go find this.
Okay, yeah, I would love to find. I was actually searching on X while you were telling that story.
Yeah, it's still on his about page. It is.
Man,
is just,
how is he not like one of the most famous people ever? He only has almost 400,000 followers on Twitter. It's surprising.
Well, it's because, I mean, I know why, because I was watching pretty closely while Creative Live was born and happened, because that was the thing that happened after Best Camera was he then went out and raised, money and built Creative Live. Creative Live was just one of the names of his little bits of content that he was putting out. It was his own Creative Live thing. Like the entire SanDisk thing and all that stuff led to him then starting to do video production for himself and start sharing more of his creative work, which then led to Creative Live, where he started doing interviews and then he started doing things. And then it was a big enough project that they raised venture money on it and then created the Creative Live classroom community education space. And then it made enough money that it plateaued. Right. Or like it became a sustainable business, but it didn't explode. So they didn't get a ton more investment. And so like it's just been grinding, doing its own thing. But when you do that and you switch from creating content on open networks that are for free, algorithm driven, blah, 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 and instead focus on building a platform over here that's closed and for money, you kind of stop growing in the other places. Not that I would have any experience or knowledge about that. Anyway, join Glass today, glass.photo/offer/endless appreciation. Get $10, right? Like
So that's an interesting thing I've observed in my own life and just seeing companies come and go, obviously founded by other people, is the relentless fixation on growth and how that is a perfect recipe for that business usually dying. Almost always. Yeah, this is, I know, and I wouldn't describe myself as a fan, but I do pop in and out of Joe Rogan podcasts, and one phrase from him that I did really like, just a perspective that I can say, okay, I'm with you on that, is his question of like, you're already making $20 million a year. Who cares if you make 21 or 25 or 200? You're already making that amount of money. Why do you have to fixate on making any more? That's an odd thing. It is weird to think that people, just in life always have to be fixated on, maybe it's because...
I cannot believe that is a Joe Rogan talking point.
Yeah, I know.
With
that's
his
exactly
own
why
fixation of making more and more money.
I know. That's why I was like, oh, okay. I see part of maybe how he makes sense to some people sometimes. But it's true. It's like, why is so much of the human experience fixated on growth. And I think, honestly, it's because everybody sort of can collectively recognize at some point it's going to fade and go away. So you want to overcorrect as much as you possibly can so that the tail is, the slope is comfortable as possible. Maybe that's the reason.
Or it's because capitalism makes us...
Or greed.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or it's greed, or it's drive, and just like, okay, yeah, I figured this out. Great. That's going to make me money for a while. Now let's, what's the next thing? Yeah, it's weird. And I think, honestly, it probably is more, sadly, in the greed and capitalistic, lifestyle creep. This is something where photographers starting out, they ask all the time, like, oh, when did you make the jump to full-time? It's like, okay. I see, just giving me that question is framing the argument of like, I'm making money from this now. That's wonderful. I'm making as much as or close to what I make in my salaried full-time job with the company. Okay. You need to be making at least double that to jump to full-time as a photographer, in my opinion. Holy shit. I was going to make one grand awesome point, and it just floated away from my brain. Sorry. Nope, it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone. Totally gone. Wow, I hate when that happens. Yep.
Oh, no. Is it really gone? Is it not coming back?
It might come back. It might come back, but that siren isn't helping. Yeah, sorry. Something about money and making money.
Making money, how capitalism is bad, and like...
Capitalism. Growth.
Endless growth. Oh, well.
Endless growth. But if you're listening and you're still working a job and you are desperate to go full-time, you need to be making at least double what you're making in your salaried position to have approximately the same comfort of living of what you currently are experiencing. Yeah. That's,
if you need the discomfort to motivate you to make that much, then quit now. But it's going to be really uncomfortable for a really long time.
Yeah, that's the whole nother point in this world of, sometimes people need that discomfort. Honestly, I think that a lot of people that have successful businesses seek growth just because they can feel the abandonment of whatever they originally made, and that drives them to do something with their life, like that weird push that you feel to do something else. Like when you are set and you've made your 20 million or whatever a year in a company, like it's an odd thing because your entire life and mindset is fixated on making something work. And when it actually does, you have to almost force yourself to make something else work. It's weird. Sorry.
You don't have to. You don't.
But you don't have to. That's exactly my point. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
That's hilarious because you're going to edit this podcast and publish it like tomorrow before going to your 9 shoots while starting your AI generative idea company while also... You see what I did there?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Starting Friday, just for people listening, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shoots in 5 days. All of which are in upstate New York or New York City, which is very odd to me.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't know why.
Are any of them gay weddings? You got to stop shooting gay weddings and not inviting me to second shoot.
Sorry.
That's very rude.
None of them are, I don't think any of them are gay weddings. Sorry about that. Yeah, I really should get on that.
Yeah.
My apologies. Yes.
Are you kidding? It's going to be so fun. You're going to watch. You'll be amazed at my posing advice for the big, beautiful bears that look just like me.
We didn't get a lot of feedback about our navigating through posing same-sex couples, strangely. I don't...
maybe everyone was just like, wow, great job, everybody. Great thoughts.
Maybe we are at the age where everybody's like, yeah, obviously, this is boring.
Duh.
Next podcast.
Well, here we are. I'll tell you a story about musicians forever, just so I can say I want to travel with a musician. I want to travel with Parcels.
Okay.
I want to be Parcels band photographer. Parcels, get at me.
So think about it for a second, though. What is the next deeper, if you, just spitballing ideas? Creative brainstorm. There are no wrong answers. So the leap between, the band, the photos on stage, like them live, it's crazy, it's so good, this photographer is amazing. Holy shit, they are photographing that band, brushing their teeth, and is like, what is the next layer deep? Because I feel like intimacy is, at this day and age, like a shortcut toward like, just do the most intimate, crazy thing you can think of, and we are going to wow people. Like that's kind of a given. What do you think, if you can imagine, is or would be like another fascinating way to photograph, not just a musician, maybe if you want to like, we can silo the discussion to that genre, but, photographing people in a way that is, resonates, right? That people can connect to, because photographing, the reason it's awesome is because it's like, oh my God, those musicians are just like me. Like they're on a tour bus and they're driving across the Midwest or whatever, but they're brushing their teeth just like I do every night. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is if you said it right now, it would already
exist. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the purpose of this documentation can also be different, right? Like, that celebrity's just like me. Like, of course Beyonce brushes her teeth, right? Like, hooray. But I think there's also like a documentation of the creative process that exists, because like the creative process doesn't stop when you're not on stage or when you're not taking photos, right? Like the stuff you're onboarding and the stuff you're interacting with, right? There's this really beautiful scene in season 2 of The Bear. This is a pro Bear podcast where
are there anti-bear podcasts?
Yeah, dude, I don't know, but if there are, I want to fight them. I'm gonna start a beef with them.
Excellent show that I had to stop watching.
Did you get it? The beef. I would have beef with them, and that was the name of the show. Okay, that's the name of the restaurant on the show. You're gonna love it. Yeah. But there's this beautiful moment when up and coming trainee is working in a kitchen with Will Poulter in Copenhagen. He's doing what's called staging, which is when you go work for free at really nice restaurants. They teach you things while you're there. You get a bunch of experience and then you fly home. So he's staging at one of the best restaurants in the world with their pastry chef. And the pastry chef was talking about what it takes to be great and what's going on. And he says, like, what's the biggest thing that like stops people from being great? And he talks about how like levels of proficiency in the skill kind of stop mattering. And at some point it's about, I'm butchering the quote. We should probably just cut in the quote from YouTube. I don't know if you can legally do that or not. But he talks about being open, right? Like being open, you gotta spend more time out there. You gotta, like live life. You gotta do stuff. Being open to the activities, to then be inspired by them to make the thing you're making, right? Whether that be a really delicious dessert or a really nice self-portrait or like rinse repeat. You got to spend time out there interacting and living the life to be able to document it or to be able to write it. And so like the creative process for musicians, right? Like one of the coolest experiences of my life was when I was like 15, I shot an emo band's concert, and then afterwards they were like, hey, we're going to IHOP, anybody want to come? Who wants to come? And so like 4 or 5 people from the venue, me included, joined the band at IHOP, and we were just hanging out. And one of the band members said something as a joke to somebody, and the lead singer was and then grabbed a napkin and took out a pen and wrote down like 2 lyrics incorporating one of the jokes, and like wrote down a line, and then was like, okay, cool, and like stuffed it in a moleskin in his pocket, and then that was it. And I was like, what the fuck was that? And he was like, that was just a funny line, so I'm writing it down for later, like it'll come up, right? And then it did come up later in the thing, and I was like, oh, I was there, right? Like that line made it into a song, and I was like, it's right there, and that was nuts to like see one portion of the little thing happen, and it like happened at a Denny's at like 3 a.m. In Boise, Idaho.
He took a photograph. That is the same mindset of a photographer. Hopefully, is you're like kind of looking at the world as if it's an event or a play in front of you, and objectively like trying to take notes of things that you think are really interesting.
Man,
that's amazing. That's a wonderful story. I love that.
Photography's cool as shit. Man, art is just cool as hell. This is so cool.
And I just have to say, obviously I'm quite biased, but the job of photographing somebody's wedding day is like a cheat code to get direct access to essentially an unlimited amount of those types of events.
Yeah.
Where people want you to photograph them throwing away the napkin or picking up the napkin, writing the note or whatever it is. Like they actually, without you having to justify it in any weird way socially, you have full access, a passport to documenting quirks like that, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's the best. But that's also why you have trouble creating intimacy with a solo subject.
Totally.
Yeah.
No idea because it always feels forced. It's like, oh, it's you and me and a photograph. Let's do something cool now.
Let's just look at each other and then I'll take a picture.
And that's why insight is...
Please find your inspiration at insight.photo and glass.photo. Onboard all the new information that you can.
I would like to point out a comment somebody asked me that actually really stopped me and made me think. It was a question here. Do you believe your work has evolved over time? I'm curious because you're still leaning... This may be a language barrier, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you're still leaning into creating images with tricks instead, which you've been doing for a decade. How do you define your evolution as a creative or artist? I think that sounds more critical than they intended it to come across, but it's an odd thing to me, the evolution of your work. It's just like what you described, where somebody in the process of making something is probably not aware that it's going to be received in a certain way, where everybody's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And the artist is like, what? Okay. That I think can be extended into years and decades and a lifetime of work where you actually don't know what you're doing the entire time. But you continue to make work. I do feel like that's sort of, if you are able to definitively say like how your work has evolved, that is sort of a red flag that maybe you should change something up. That was kind of the point I was trying to make.
Join in next week when we talk about how Daniel can pinpoint exactly how his work has changed over the years. I'm just kidding.
Oh, Daniel. It's okay.
I wish.
Just gotta let go. Just gotta let it flow.
Let it flow, bro. Well, Sam, I really turned around. Started grim, but...
I have no idea what this is going to be like in the edit, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to edit out that like 6 minutes at the beginning. But leave in that we edit out 6 minutes. That's a...
We'll see. See how it goes.
No, you're definitely editing out the... Okay. All right. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.